Okay, I'm gonna wait a minute here for everyone. Rebecca, also LOL that there's miralax in the background because I was testing thickeners with miralax to see, like, because I don't know if y'all know, but certain thickeners you can't use with miralax, and so that's why I have it in the background, because I was testing it with Pure Thick and it went straight to thin when I added that in there. Hi, Kaylee. I'm waiting for Rebecca to get in here. Oh wait, okay, I think I can invite her over here. There. For her to come on here, but hello, hey Dimple. Oh my gosh, how are you? Also, I'm laughing about all the things in my background. Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm laughing because first I get on the live and I have miralax chilling there. But in my defense, well, first of all, I do be using miralax when needed. But I was testing thickeners with miralax to see if it stayed thick. And it didn't with the thickener that I was using. So Pure Thick, you have to also mix the liquid with miralax. It went straight to thin. I did moderately thick. Literally the second I added miralax, it went straight down to thin.
That's so weird.
And then I have this laundry thing for my cat Marshall's syringes. That's what I put because that's considered safe throwaway. So this is exactly what you were talking about when every time we get together, just shenanigans hit.
It's yeah, I turned myself this way just so that people couldn't see the chaos of the home.
That's
that
okay,
I'm
because
in, which is mine. So.
All my chaos back here. So, but anyway, I'm so excited to talk to you because I feel like we've been talking about your research study for so long, and now that's come to fruition of it's being released and people can start to share it with their patients and their families that they're working with. I want us to talk about it. So why don't we start with Rebecca? Why don't you we'll give a little intro of who you are, and then summarize the research you're doing and kind of the why behind this. Hi, Rebecca. We love our duo too. But yes, go ahead and give us that.
So I'm Rebecca Smith, and I'm a speech pathologist and a PhD candidate. And I have lifespan dysphagia specialization, but my research area focus for the purposes of my dissertation and, hopefully what's to come from it is standardization of screening and assessment methods for pediatric feeding disorder. And so I think that this idea really initially came about obviously through over and over refining with mentors and colleagues and friends like you. I even though currently right now I'm in Chicago, I am a research assistant professor in Dr. Martin Harris's lab, but I haven't been here long. And before that, I spent years and years in more rural and just less areas that had less access to specialty care. And even though I felt like I was surrounded by wonderful colleagues and wonderful practitioners, just the natural order of things, I think things take a little bit to trickle down. Mm-hmm. So I was noticing, in just referral patterns that there was a lot of inconsistencies when I was trying to build a pediatric feeding and swallowing caseload in the university-based clinic at my last job. Mm-hmm. The referral sources were really inconsistent, and I noticed I was getting patients kind of too late before we were able to avoid some of those psychosocial issues that develop if you don't catch PFD early on. And then methods, the reasoning behind the referrals were just not at all the same. It was, and as we know, I think one of the number one reasons for referrals that we get is because patients are demonstrating lower percentile scores on high-end weight charts. And mm-hmm. At that point, it's an almost failure to thrive situation. It's really,
it becomes much more urgent at that point. Had we got them in sooner, could we have avoided some of those other factors?
Yeah. And I just kind of, and I also felt like I was getting referrals for patients that presented more with picky eating and not problematic feeding. And so
Yeah.
I was like, man, what could we do to really, improve screening in this population, and how how can we get the word out about some of the tools that are available? And I've just always really loved outcome measures, because I think like patient perspectives were something that I didn't really think about as early on in my career, which is kind of ridiculous, but just true.
Hmm.
So,
We
but
are very honest
yeah, I
with our
know we
learning.
are. I just was kind of like, I felt like the gatekeeper of all, the feeding and swallowing knowledge, and I felt like it was my way or the highway, and like I just never really thought of patient and caregiver parent perspectives on the issues. And so the more that I started practicing in outpatient and early intervention based settings, the more I realized how valuable that information
Yeah.
is. And I started using Britt Pados's and her colleagues' infant feeding care resources to inform my clinical practice. And, I was familiar with the ICFQ screening tool that Feeding Matters put
Yeah.
out with their key opinionators and pioneers in our field. And I loved, the papers that were published on the use of that tool and how they made it and how they
Right.
refined it to the 6 questions. And I was just really interested in, after, talking to mentors and figuring out what exactly it was that I was trying to figure
Mhm.
out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's
That's
how
like,
I,
right. Like
yeah.
you go from this like massive idea and you're like,
Mhm.
hold on, I gotta like bring it in, bring it in, bring it in. And maybe that's part of like you refining your research questions. So like
Yes.
maybe like walk through that piece now of like, we started with all this background, right, of information. You're like, we need a better method. We need better ways to,
Yes.
one, identify the kids that do need support, but also like not get referrals for kids who don't actually meet the criteria. Like,
Hmm.
that like in between piece of like, well, I don't think this is actually like PFD,
Yes.
and where that line is. So, how did you then refine your research question?
Honestly, it was just through learning more about feasibility of research and how, like, what it is that you can accomplish within, a specific window of time
Yeah.
versus later when you have, grant money, when you have multi-site institutions and you have more people on board
Right.
to support you. So I think it was both trying to hang on, a balance of hanging on to the integrity of the project and what I wanted it to
Mm-hmm.
yield, which was, ultimately, is the ICFQ screening tool comparable to the outcome measures that Pados and colleagues published,
Mm-hmm.
where we have data showing its clinical validity?
Mm-hmm.
And, if parents show concern on these longer instruments, does that also equate to a fail? So two or more significant on the ICFQ screening tool. So that came about through me looking at like what I was able to do within the window of time that I had and the resources I had,
Mm-hmm.
and really just talking through with mentors, Dr. Hazelwood, Dr. Gary McCullough. I remember chatting very early on with Dr. Gosa. I don't even know if she talks to so many people. She's probably like, I don't even remember having this conversation with you. But it was like, because I was like, and I remember I initially wanted to do more, some like, to figure out like what physicians are using,
Mm-hmm.
like, and survey them. And then and I still feel like that would be a really interesting like offshoot from the project, because it's like, okay, we know that the screener, comparing those outcome measures, it should show similar outcomes. So like we can use the shorter tool,
Right.
not necessarily in place of the longer instrument, but like at the beginning
Yeah, in
and
the
then
early
in the
stage, because
early
like
stages.
physicians, I know that's the reason that I love sharing that tool, because it's just a 6 question screener, and like
Yeah.
pediatricians don't get a lot of time with them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so like it's a tool that like, one, we can either provide to like families that are of concern, and families can fill it out and bring that to their physician and say like, I'm concerned about feeding, like here's a tool that says
Hmm.
like I probably should get a referral. But also
Hmm.
for pediatricians to just like keep in their office to just have as the screener,
Yes.
because like, I mean, we all know like the earlier we can start a kid in therapy, like the better. Like we want that early intervention for all the things you talked about earlier.
Dr. Sanchez,
Yeah.
Catherine, is also like has been instrumental in, you know, helping refine the question. And we are in really the primary aim actually is that the secondary aim is comparing the larger instruments to the shorter one.
Mm-hmm.
The primary aim is, does this child have a diagnosis of PFD or other feeding problems or dysphagia? Because we know that in itself could be a separate project, is what coding are we using? Because
Yeah.
we know that people, you know, who are watching and we can attest to like, okay, we're getting just random codes
Constant
still.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, so what, you know, what does the screening tool, how does it compare, you know, to those diagnostic codes that are also like, do they have those? And then for our international participants, we're just, you know, asking the question of, do you know of a diagnosed problem? It may not, because I know that they don't have like the coding system
Code
in the same way.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, that's the primary aim. The secondary aim is comparing the longer instruments. And then the third aim is looking at some additional like demographics of parent, caregiver, and infant child, and seeing how those responses align with concern levels on the outcome measure and the ICFQ tool results. And, you know, that could potentially aid in the development or addition to, you know, more screening questions, either, you know, to support the ICFQ or to inform like, you know, the assessment process.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that you've primarily been in South Carolina, but you're familiar with the fact that, you know, for early intervention, states vary on like what's considered an automatic qualifying diagnosis, which literally just blew my mind. Like when I moved to North Carolina, because we had tons of babies with like neonatal abstinence syndrome, and they were just not like getting an automatic referral. And so, and we know that those infants can continue to have problems and continue to like present with disordered feeding, even, you know, after they're treated for withdrawal. And so, so I think, you know, obviously getting that screening in the hands of those who are considered high risk, or who present with certain personal factors would be ideal, you know, if the research supports that. I have like some later preterm questions, because I'm very passionate about like the forgotten late preterm, 35 to 37, where they're just like expected to be term.
They're like,
and
just they're kind of there. They're there.
Yeah. And it's like, I know that a lot of like hospitals, probably most, like you're 35 weeks and you're just put on the floor. Not necessarily direct admit to the NICU, which is wild. So, you know, I think it manifested from just conversations with mentorship, feasibility. Like, of course, I still have an interest in serving physicians to see kind of what they're using to guide referral process now. Informally, I've done that. And I've gotten what I told you, the height growth charts, parent complaints. And if it matches like their concern level, but then I haven't really necessarily gotten a lot of information on like, I'm like, well, what informs your concern? You know what I mean? So it's just the inconsistency of it all. And I know that PFD is such a gray area, but I think we've come a long way in like standardizing, you know, our approaches. And I'm hoping that that'll trickle down screening, assessment, and then finally treatment. That one's going to take a little longer.
That one takes a little bit longer for sure. So, okay.
Oh God.
So with your specific study, what is like the inclusion criteria? Like like if I take your study and I'm going to be sharing it with families or people I know, like what's the criteria to say like, hey, you're somebody that I should give this to try to help, you know, to contribute to this research?
Yeah. So right now, parents and caregivers, you have to be primary parent or caregiver of a child birth to 4 years old. I really would prefer like exactly 4, older than 4. I don't think I'm really supposed to be, based on like the prior studies that have already been done. I don't know because of the tools and like what they've been previously validated for, the
Yeah.
ICFQ, it's not really recommended to use like above 4.
Okay.
So I think I'm taking that data. I don't know if I'll include it in I probably will do a separate analysis or something with it, but parents, caregivers of children, birth to 4, be able to read and speak in English, and you have to be over 18. So, I mean, and the QR code and the link to the research is, in my bio, it's on the flyer.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for everyone sharing, but it walks you through, like it asks you like at the very beginning, like it gives you the consent form and then it asks you those questions.
And do
So
they need to like
can,
already have a diagnosis of PFD or like just
I
suspect
need,
it or have some feeding concerns?
truthfully, I need anyone, like I need all of that. So like
Okay.
so it to be a representative sample, like if you already are in feeding therapy, if your child's already in feeding and swallowing therapy, please consider taking it, because it'll still,
Okay.
if your results show concern levels, if your results show, fail on the ICFQ
Yeah.
screener, I mean, that can still be valuable, or if it doesn't, like that's valuable information. So, obviously, if your child doesn't have to have any feeding issues, if that's still valuable for us. And then, I do feel like it's a really good, especially good opportunity for parents and caregivers who are concerned about their infant child's feeding, because it's not a diagnostic tool. But I mean, in my, like, you can look at the literature, like Dr. Gosa, Dr. Dodrill, and I think Dr. Marshall, their clinometric review on outcome measures that
Yeah.
they did last year,
Yeah.
it was a good paper. Which I also had never heard of the word clinometric, and I I just was like, now I use it all the time and feel like,
That's
oh
kind
my
of a
God,
fancy word.
I feel like a scientist. She's like, I know, I'm such a scientist, dear God.
And when you say
But
clinometric, so
I
impressive.
know, I don't know if I'm wondering if it's an Australian word. Maybe Catherine can help
Yeah.
us, like wherever she is, whatever time it is there, which it might be the morning and she's probably at work. So,
Yeah.
but so like when they looked at all the outcome measures, they found that what had the highest just rigor and methodological like
Yeah.
content and quality was like the PD, and that's one of the instruments that
Yeah.
parents can fill out on my survey. And so, I mean, obviously it can't generate a diagnosis, but like just from me working, I rarely ever get a child that is like high concern in some categories on that
That
doesn't
wouldn't
need
be
something. You know what I
right.
mean? Like that
Yeah,
doesn't need
for
something.
sure.
It may not be
For sure.
me, because
Yeah.
there's like
Right.
GI questions on there. There's,
Yeah.
stuff, but like they need something, right? So, I
Right.
mean, I think it can really inform, if you have concerns and if you need to follow up with your pediatrician. And I am, giving results back to parents. If parents, caregivers fill it out and they tell me, no, my child doesn't have this diagnosis, but the screening results end up demonstrating concern, I'm going to
Right.
be contacting them and letting them know, just because it's like, that's why I asked for their contact information, because it's super unethical for me to like note a potential concern that a parent
And
or
not
caregiver has
tell.
and not say
Yeah.
something.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense. It makes
yeah.
sense. So, kind of like one final question, and then whoever is in here, if you all have any questions in general, please feel free to comment them. Like, we're also cool just answering some like PFD type questions just for funsies.
Yes.
But where or like how long does the survey take for people, and like how many participants are you trying to get?
Yes. So, um, so the survey does take, I'm warning people because I know people with children are just so busy. I have animals and I feel busy, right? So like I'm just like, I totally get it. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes. And so and some people are filling it out on behalf of their like multiple children. Some people have children with multiple, feeding and swallowing issues, or they just like have several that are under 4. So I'm just like letting them know, hey, plan. I'm keeping, this open for a while. Right
Okay.
now we have about, um, in the mid
Okay.
50s completed. I
Cool.
need probably 220 is my minimum, but my committee would prefer me to have more.
Okay.
So, but just because that's going to increase, like,
Right. Yeah.
the value, like,
Absolutely.
and I'm not sure that it would be representative of the true prevalence, because I'm also like going to look at the sample and say, okay, out of the participants, like how many have a diagnosis of PFD? And I don't know that it would be representative if there's not enough people
Enough
to take
for
it.
sure.
So,
For sure.
yeah, so
Cool.
that's what I'm looking for.
Cool.
So, and
Cool.
I'm just really grateful. I'm not able to incentivize anyone, and so like ultimately it's my gratitude that you're getting, but the ability to contribute to research, and it's informing, some of your like the back of the mind questions you might have about your child's feeding.
Right.
So,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I'm really excited about the work you're doing and to see what comes of it. And, for anybody listening, and I'll put it in the comments after I post this, but just like share it with the families you're currently working with, share it with families, just like parents that have little ones that again, from birth to 4. So anyone that fits in that zone, like we just want to share so that we can get enough participants so that, yeah, you can get it as representative of a sample as we can.
Oh, you froze slightly. Oh no, there was a tech issue. Can you hear me? Okay, I can hear you. All right. I'm okay, everybody.
But anyway, yeah, just we want to share it. I'll share the link below. I'll keep sharing it on my story as well to make sure that we can
I
get
know.
the word out there and stuff. But I thank you for
No,
chatting
thank
with me on it.
thank
This was great.
thank you all for filling it out. And honestly, like, I am sorry, I'm spamming everyone, like, and it's going to be, several more weeks of this, but it's just like, you never know when that one person who might really, need that nudge to kind of get some answers about, like, maybe I should talk to the doctor about XYZ. And
Right.
having like actually completed, information can be helpful, because sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
like, we love our pediatricians, but sometimes, they want to minimize the concerns that we have, and it's not to be hateful. It's just because they want to reassure
Yeah.
you, and if they don't see any like growth or weight problems, they're just kind of like, not as worried about it, which isn't, I think it'll change. I
Yeah.
think as more people understand what PFD
Yeah.
is, then I think
Well,
it'll
and I think,
change.
yeah,
So,
I think that awareness of like what PFD is and recognizing that like it has 4 domains to it. Like it's not just are they growing? It's like
yes.
the medical, the feeding skill, the nutritional, and the psychosocial. And we can have, multiple in there. And I think that better establishing now that we have like the diagnostic criteria, I think you can move in the direction of better diagnostics and like having better information to actually like screen and then say like where are the areas we have to consider, when do we need to make a referral, like, and getting those in there faster.
Yeah,
Because
and we want you to just, if you are a practicing clinician watching, we want you to pick up the patients you need to pick up, right? Like, we don't want you to pick up, every child that comes in,
mm-hmm.
because you're not going to see the outcomes that you would want, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not ethical. So
Yeah. Right.
so we
Yeah.
just all need to, I mean, that's why, like, I mean, screening exists in the adult population, and we're trying to get everybody more on the same page with like how we approach all that. So
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate you
thank
spending
you.
time here, and yeah, I'm excited to see this unfold.
Thank
Cool.
you.
I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.